conjectures could allow, all was settled between him and Georgiana by way of
domestic arrangement.
And Lizzie feels that she accepted him solely from
pure and disinterested desire of an establishment.
And Mamma cared not how that establishment was gained.
Charlotte's marriage is unaccountable. In every view, unaccountable.
You must not give way to feelings such as these. They will ruin your happiness.
Dear Charlotte, impossible.
Why should you be so surprised, Eliza? Do you think it incredible that Mr. Collins should be able to procure any woman's good opinion because he was not so happy as to succeed with you?
Well, indeed not, but 2 offers of marriage in 3 days.
I'm sure when you've had time to think it over, you'll be happy for me. I'm not a romantic, you know I never was. You must visit me at the parsonage as soon as ever you can.
Mr. Collins has been taken in. Worse, Elizabeth, I'm sure, is the cause of the mischief.
No.
I tell you, we are in a pitiable state. Because of the entail, Charlotte Lucas will be the mistress of this house. I will be forced to make way for her and live to see her take my place in it.
Let us hope for better things. Let us flatter ourselves that I may be the survivor.
In our gloom, Mr. Wickham's society was of marital service, but his betrayal by Mr. Darcy was of general knowledge. We all agreed that
Mr. Darcy was the worst of men. On the following Monday, the gardeners, my mother's brother and his sister came to me. Mr. Gardner was a charming, amiable man, and Mrs. Gardner enlivened the premises with talk of the latest fashions and the giving of sage advice.
a young man such as you describe, Mr. Bingley, so easily falls in love with a pretty girl for a few weeks, and just as easily forgets her. Now, as to Mr. Wickham, whom you mention far too frequently, I would have you on your guard.
You shall not be in love with me if I can prevent it.
Do not involve yourself in an affection which, where the want of fortune, should make very imprudent.
At the present, I am not in love with Mr. Wickham. I do count him as the most agreeable man I ever saw.
Unwise.
But, my dear aunt, how can I be wiser than so many of my fellow creatures if I am tempted? How am I to know that it is wisdom to resist? All I can promise, therefore, is not to be in a hurry.
I say no more. I shall take Jane with me to London, poor girl, where a change of scene might be of some service. It had better happen to you, Lizzie, for you have laughed yourself out of it sooner. I understand you want to visit the Collinses in their newly married state. You must visit me as well.
Me to Hunsford Parsonage. The improvement of spending a night in London made plan as perfect as plan can be. Jane, look now, I see London is agreeable to you.
My dearest Lizzie, sit with me.
With every pleasure. You look so well.
I confess myself to have been entirely deceived in Miss Bingley's regard for me. She has hardly visited me here in London, and when she did, it was evident she took no pleasure in it. In fact, it seems like she came only to convince me of her brother's indifference to me and regard for Miss Georgiana Darcy.
Oh, all gentlemen are held in my lowest repute. It is now said that Mr. Wickham is the admirer of a certain Miss King. Oh, whose most remarkable charm, I might add, seems to be the acquisition through family mortality of £10,000. And it is the least indelicate to direct his attention towards her so soon after the event. Lizzie, you are ill, are you?
A man in distressed circumstances has not the time for the elegant decorums which others might observe. If Miss King does not object, why should I?
Her not objecting to it does not justify him.
Well, I have a very poor opinion of young men who live in Derbyshire. And their intimate acquaintances who live in Hertfordshire are not much better. I am sick of them all. Thank heavens I'm going to the Collinses' parsonage, where I shall meet a man with not one agreeable quality. Perhaps stupid men are the only ones worth knowing after all.
Bravo! You must accompany Mr. Gardner and myself on a tour of pleasure this summer, where we shall avoid the sex altogether, and regard landscape.
My dear aunt, what delight, what felicity. You give me fresh life and vigor. Adieu to disappointment and spleen. What are men to rocks and mountains? Every object of my next day's journey was new and interesting. The chaise comfortable, weather delightful, and all conspired for the pleasure of the traveler. As I pulled into the Collins' parsonage, Mr. Collins and Charlotte appeared at the gate.
Elizabeth, you are welcome and welcome again. Please come in immediately. You must be wearied and jostled.
Oh, I have news of Lady Catherine's delicate consideration in inviting us to dine at Rosings, next night but one. Do not make yourself uneasy, my fair cousin, about your apparel. Lady Catherine will not think the worse of you for being so poorly dressed.